Very warm welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for your company this evening. This is Randolph Waite, and tonight's discussion is egg cups. So before we broke for the news, we were discussing the average household, and more particular the kitchen of that household, and we were focusing on the kitchen cupboard where the egg cups are kept. And we say egg cups in the plural. It's very strange how many egg cups are actually owned by an individual. For example, I know someone who is on their own. They live all alone, and yet they seem to have purpose for 6 egg cups. Now, these egg cups are not part of a set. They are separate individual egg cups. I believe one is bone china. There's one wooden egg cup, and the quality or the make of the others I'm unsure of. However, the 6 egg cups don't even stretch as far as meeting the requirements of having a boiled egg 7 days a week from a different egg cup. So it really is a bit of a mystery as to why this one person would have 6 egg cups for one person. And I also know from a previous discussion on the show several years ago where a family member from the family household that called in to let us know that I think the discussion on that evening was kitchen utensils. We were concentrating on fish slices, and the conversation swayed somewhat from fish slices to soup ladles, and one of the listeners have called in to talk about the cutlery drawer and why they felt the need to have 4 fish slices, 7 soup ladles, I beg your pardon, and 24 egg cups were in the listener's cupboard. And I did ask if the egg cups were used by all members of the family on a daily basis, and the answer was a categoric no. And therefore, the reason we brought this back onto the platform for tonight's discussion was to really reinvigorate with listeners just how much stuff they have in their kitchen which really they don't use. Now, the egg cup situation in my own household, I'm pleased to say, was reduced some years ago. I just felt there was no need for all these different egg cups. I mean, there was no smiley characters. There was no shapely boiled egg holders. There was just these plain egg cups, and they serve no other purpose on this planet but to serve a boiled egg. It's simple. My own preference in the household, I have to say, is a very charming Wedgwood egg cup. I think it was late Edwardian. I paid a fairly handsome sum for that egg cup, but I thought it's something that I'd like to look at and admire, not only in the cupboard, because there's nothing more pleasing, I'm sure you must agree, when you open your kitchen cupboard and you find a very attractive egg cup looking at you. But certainly on the breakfast table, there's nothing more pleasing to the eye and more appealing than 4 rounds of toast on the toast rack, a simmering coffee pot on the stove, and two boiled eggs sitting side by side, ready for placement into the egg cup. One of the listeners on the show prior to the news had indicated they only had the one egg cup in their household also, and they felt that they were missing out on having an additional egg cup. The reason being, of course, they had 2 boiled eggs in the morning, and they thought it was a bit of an understatement to if that's really the right word I'm looking for, to be perfectly honest. But it's sacrilege. That's probably better to say. It was sacrilege to have a nice brown speckled boiled egg sitting on the plate, the side plate, while the other egg took prominence in the egg cup. So what we're talking about, and hopefully we can gather more interest on this in a wider scale, is what are we going to do with all these egg cups? And this is the big question. Is there shared ownership when it comes to egg cups in the land? And it's not something I really talk much about on the commute to work, or if I'm meeting friends, socially. It doesn't come up that often in conversation. It does at some dinner parties. We have had the occasions where it's cropped up, and a few questions, but nothing to the degree where we'd like to maybe look to the idea of setting up a national database where people with egg cups who want to get rid of them can then pass them through a chain of chain reaction. Sorry, I'm not getting my words tonight. The producer's looking at me as if to say, "Have you been drinking?" But I can assure you I'm not. But what we're saying is the database where one could access that database to say, well, look, the egg cup was in the cupboard, but it's lost, and I can't blame the plumber that came to fix the pipes. I don't think he would have taken it, but you just never know in these days. But on a more serious note, if for Johnny Jenkins, for example, accessed the database and he was looking for a particular egg cup, or he didn't have an egg cup, then there would be he'd be able to find surplus on that database. It's just an idea, but certainly something worth considering. We're going to break for music here, and we'll come straight back. And if the listeners have any hot questions on egg cups, please get on that phone. We'd be dying to hear from you. Thank you. Thanks very much, and a welcome back to the show. That was a beautiful piece of music by Unita called Myth. It's from Through the Veils album, 10th anniversary special edition. Beautiful music. We're talking about egg cups this evening, and more so the idea we may well be looking to think of getting enough support to get a national database set up in order that we as people who were happen to be without an egg cup can access that database and readily get themselves one, or those who feel they've got too many egg cups can offload, and through the database would be a great way of getting rid of these unwanted egg cups. While we were off air for a moment or two listening to that music, we had a caller who had called in with quite an interesting point, actually. And what she said was the situation as far as eggs. There's no standard on the eggs. For some reason, there's a standard on classification of eggs. Yes, but for egg cups, there's no standardization on these ones. So what she was referring to is when she goes to buy some large eggs, for example, or maybe some free-range eggs, but certainly she mentioned large eggs to us. She finds that with her egg cup, she can't get them onto the egg cup. It topples over by the weight, and therefore she ends up with a boiled egg lying on the kitchen floor or broken upon the tablecloth on the morning breakfast table. Again, that would be something that's a really great example where, with the national database for egg cups in place, that listener could purposely access the database, explain the problem, and shortly receive another egg cup more fitting for the eggs that she's using. Certainly, I have had situations where, with the Edwardian Wedgwood egg cup that I mentioned earlier in the show, sometimes I buy small eggs. The eggs look very, very, very poor in the Edwardian egg cup, and that's why I do tend, as often as I can, to buy large or free-range eggs myself, because they fit perfectly into the Edwardian egg cup. And that's not to say that the Edwardians, the chickens in the Edwardian era, were laying larger eggs. It's just the classification of those eggs it wasn't standardised, I don't believe, until sometime in 1979. I think it was 79, possibly later. I'm sure somebody will let us know. But that is a big problem. Egg cups eggs not fitting egg cups. It could be very stressful. If you've got a stressful job, a stressful commute ahead of you, the last thing you want is an egg which is toppled out of the egg cup and ruined your breakfast. It's just simply not on. So I'm grateful for that listener to come in, get on the show tonight, give us a call on the show tonight, and let us know about that particular problem. Certainly worth noting, and certainly worth sharing with the other listeners, as I've just done. So we're talking from that experience of mine when we had that show. I think it was four years ago, and the producer had gone back in one of the diaries, and yes, it was back in the springtime 4 years ago, and he said that the whole show was dedicated entirely to fish slices, and I remember the evening very well. The number of people who just point blankly refuse to use fish slices nowadays, the numbers are huge. We didn't know to the extent until that evening's broadcast, and just fish slices, very much like soup tureens or even soup ladles, have gone very much out of fashion. I just don't know what people do. I mean, I've no other. I couldn't think how to turn a piece of fish in a pan without a fish slice. Maybe there's a method that I'm not aware of, like tossing pancakes or something of that nature. But I wouldn't like to see my haddock landing on the floor, unless, of course, Middles, the cat, is at my feet and gets a early Christmas, for example. But what we'll do just now is we're going to take a few calls, and we'll come back in a moment or two, and we'll report on any interesting calls that we get in regards to the egg cups. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. It's Randolph Waite's here with the Egg Cup on their discussion show this Saturday evening, 8 o'clock till 9. Thanks very much for your patience. With my error, actually, I meant to say we're breaking to listen to an update on the weather forecast. My apologies, listeners. But as I said, while we were away in that short period, a few calls did come through, and I'm happy to share with these some of these comments in a few minutes or more. So once again, my apologies. What we were doing too was the producer and myself had a bit chat, and I mentioned something about standardization of the egg sizes, back in the late 70s. Well, according to the British Egg Information Service, the updates came into force on the 1st of August 1996, and they had until the end of June 97 to get the new sizes in place. Now, doesn't mention anything about what supersedes when the old sizes were categorized and standardized. So I'm unsure when that happened, but what I can say, confidently, is the small eggs, and this is not the ones I would say it was sitting poorly in the Edwardian Egg Cup, but a small egg would be classed as a 5, 6, or 7 size, and these would be under 53 grams in weight. Now the size 5, 6, and 7, that is the categories that I was mentioning. That's the old measurements, which no longer existed after the June the 30th, 1997. But as I say, I can't recall exactly when the old sizes came into play, but something in my mind says something around 1979, but I may well be wrong. A medium egg, it's a 53 to 63 gram, and in the old category would have been a size 3 or 4 or 5. That's 3, 4 or 5. Now, if you could imagine a tray of eggs sitting, and they were all mixed up together, it would be literally the early bird catches the worm. Who knows who would have been left with the smallest egg for breakfast if there'd been no standardization of these eggs. But the 3, 4, and 5, that would have been a fairly reasonable size egg. It would have been something that you could have certainly made something of. I mean, as far as the British Egg Information Service, anything like the size 3, for example, would have been best used in scrambled eggs, cakes and souffles, meringues, that type of thing. The larger eggs, and this is the ones that we are often very impressed to see, and these are now standardized between 63 and 73 grams, and old size was the former 1, 2, and 3 as well. So the medium and large, they kind of intertwined with one another, dependent on the size. So I do remember when I was a youngster that lots of the ladies of the older generation used to carry egg rings. That's the pocket egg rings with them when they were shopping, and that was purely to size up an egg before purchase. And indeed, that was pretty standard until the supermarkets started packaging these in smaller and smaller unit sizes. The very large egg, that's the 73 gram and over, these would be a size 0 or 1. So your scale on this one is the on the old size is the largest is the lowest number, and the smallest is the highest number, if that makes sense. Whereas the small egg, 53 grams, goes up to anything over 73 grams would be considered a very large egg, and that rule stands today. So anything over 73 grams, you enjoy that egg because it's a very large one indeed. The eggs that some of the listeners were talking about were probably in that category, around about 70 grams, I'm sure, because most of the egg cups that were manufactured would have been for the average size egg. So anything over 70 grams, there's a good chance your egg cup will topple. So be aware. We don't want breakfast spoilt, and we don't want your day ruined over an egg cup being heaved over just because of one egg. So hopefully that clears a few things up there, and it's always handy to know that information. And certainly, if I come back to you in another program, hopefully I'll have the times and dates of when, not the times, but the dates of when the old standardisation came into play. As far as the listeners' update, we had a caller who did ask us to say, people with modern kitchens, with all their modern devices, there doesn't seem to be any placement for egg cups in the modern day society, and I wonder if that's true or not, because I mean, people still like to eat their eggs, and I'm not sure if eggs will ever go out of fashion, to be perfectly honest, but I think the boiling of an egg always gives one satisfaction. It's less troublesome. I think that's the best way to put it. Much less troublesome than scrambled eggs, which can sometimes destroy the bottom end of the pot if you're not careful in keeping it off the heat at the correct moment. And if you've got a fried egg that's gone sideways, there's nothing worse than it looks very, very unappealing on the plate as well. And if you were to opt for example, for a poached egg, I don't think a poached egg is quite as appetizing as the boiled egg itself. I find that the poached egg, I just think it's like you've eaten something that wasn't meant to be in your stomach. That's what I feel when I've eaten a poached egg. But there we go. Okay, so that's all we have for tonight for the show. It's been a great pleasure having your company once more. We've run out of time, I'm afraid.